911, what's your emergency?
Oh God, there's a tiger. It's eating him alive. Oh, there's blood everywhere.
Ma'am, did you say a tiger? Can you confirm your location?
Yes, 847 Oakwood Drive in Cedar Creek. Please hurry. He's screaming, but I can't. Oh God, I can't watch this anymore.
Stay on the line, ma'am. Emergency units are being dispatched. Is the victim still conscious?
I don't know. There's so much blood. The tiger is. Oh my God, please hurry.
What you're about to hear is the story of Elijah Benjamin, a 51-year-old construction worker whose decision to adopt a 450-pound American tiger named Duke would end in the most gruesome death imaginable. But this wasn't just a tragic accident or a case of an animal snapping. What really happened on that October morning has been systematically covered up for months, and the security footage I'm about to describe will haunt you forever. For nearly 4 decades, Elijah had lived with crushing loneliness after losing his wife to cancer in 1985. He thought Duke would fill that void, bring meaning back to his empty existence. He was catastrophically wrong, and that mistake would cost him everything: his life, his dignity, and ultimately his very flesh. This is the untold story of how the exotic pet industry deliberately targets vulnerable, grieving people and turns them into prey for the very animals they're told will love them. What happened to Elijah Benjamin wasn't an accident. It was a carefully orchestrated tragedy that begins with corporate greed and ends with a man being eaten alive in his own backyard. Elijah Benjamin wasn't born to be a victim, but life had been systematically breaking him down for nearly 40 years. In 1985, when he was just 22 years old and barely 2 years into his marriage, his world collapsed. His wife, Sarah, the love of his life and his high school sweetheart, was diagnosed with an aggressive form of ovarian cancer that would claim her life within 8 months. The young construction worker watched helplessly as the disease ravaged the woman he'd planned to grow old with. He held her hand through chemotherapy sessions that left her weak and nauseous. He carried her to the bathroom when she could no longer walk. He whispered promises of forever into her ear as she took her final breath in a sterile hospital room that smelled of disinfectant and death. After Sarah's funeral, Elijah retreated into himself. Friends and family tried to reach out, but grief had built walls around his heart that seemed impossible to breach. He threw himself into his construction work, taking on longer hours, more dangerous jobs, anything to exhaust his body so completely that sleep would come without dreams of Sarah. Years passed, then decades. Elijah's hair turned gray, his hands became gnarled from decades of manual labor, and his heart remained frozen in 1985. He lived alone in the house he'd bought for Sarah, surrounded by her photos, her clothes still hanging in the closet, her coffee mug still sitting on the kitchen counter where she'd left it before her final hospital stay. By 2023, at 51 years old, Elijah Benjamin had become a ghost haunting his own life. Co-workers described him as reliable but distant. Neighbors rarely saw him except when he was leaving for work or returning home. He had no close friends, no romantic relationships, no family nearby. His existence had been reduced to work, television, and the slowly consuming loneliness that had been eating away at him for 38 years. It was in this state of profound isolation that Elijah encountered the social media post that would seal his fate. The advertisement was perfectly crafted, designed by psychological experts to target exactly the kind of vulnerable individual that Elijah had become. Give a rescued tiger the second chance at life they deserve. The post read, accompanied by photos of majestic big cats in spacious enclosures. We're seeking qualified individuals with large properties to provide loving homes for tigers who have been abandoned by irresponsible owners. These magnificent animals need someone who understands commitment, patience, and unconditional love. The language was deliberate, calculated. Words like rescued, second chance, loving homes, and unconditional love were chosen specifically to appeal to people seeking purpose and connection. The post didn't mention the dangers, the legal complexities, or the documented history of fatal attacks. Instead, it painted a picture of mutual salvation. Lonely tigers finding loving homes with lonely humans who could provide the care they needed. For Elijah, reading that post felt like destiny. Here was an opportunity to save something, to matter to a living creature, to fill the echoing emptiness of his house and his heart. His property was perfect, 5 acres of Texas countryside with plenty of room for a large enclosure. His finances were solid after decades of steady construction work and minimal personal expenses. Most importantly, he had an infinite reservoir of love that had been locked away since Sarah's death, waiting for someone or something worthy of receiving it. The application process was surprisingly easy. The organization, calling itself Second Chance Wildlife Sanctuary, required proof of property ownership, financial stability, and a basic background check. They sent a representative to inspect his land, who praised Elijah's setup and declared it ideal for a large cat placement. What Elijah didn't know was that Second Chance Wildlife Sanctuary was a sophisticated front operation run by exotic animal dealers who had perfected the art of placing dangerous predators with vulnerable individuals. Their business model depended on finding people like Elijah, isolated, financially stable, emotionally needy, and naive about the realities of keeping apex predators. Internal documents later obtained through federal investigation revealed the disturbing truth about their client targeting system. They maintained detailed psychological profiles of potential placements, specifically seeking out recent widowers, empty nesters, and others dealing with profound loneliness. They had identified Elijah as an ideal candidate months before he ever saw their social media post, which had been specifically targeted to men in his demographic and geographic area. 3 weeks after submitting his application, Elijah received the call that would change everything. A 3-year-old American tiger named Duke needed immediate placement due to the closure of his previous facility. Duke was described as gentle, well-socialized, and perfect for an experienced handler. The fact that Elijah had zero experience with exotic animals was conveniently overlooked. The adoption fee was substantial, $15,000 plus transportation costs, but Elijah didn't hesitate. For the first time in decades, he felt a sense of purpose, of anticipation. He was going to save Duke, and maybe, in the process, Duke would save him. When the transport truck arrived at Elijah's property on a humid August morning in 2023, what emerged from the steel shipping container was both beautiful and terrifying. Duke was a magnificent specimen of American tiger, weighing 450 pounds and measuring over 8 feet from nose to tail. His orange coat was marked with distinctive black stripes. His muscles rippled beneath his fur, and his amber eyes held an intelligence that was both captivating and unsettling. But Duke was no ordinary rescue animal, and Elijah was completely unprepared for what he had invited into his life. The truth about Duke's background was far darker than the sanitized story Elijah had been told. Internal records, discovered during the federal investigation that followed Elijah's death, revealed a pattern of aggressive behavior that stretched back years. Duke had been born in captivity at a breeding facility in Montana that operated under minimal federal oversight. From an early age, he had displayed territorial aggression that concerned his handlers. At 18 months old, he had severely mauled a facility worker who had entered his enclosure for routine cleaning. The incident was quietly settled out of court, and Duke was transferred to another facility rather than euthanized. His second placement was at a roadside zoo in Oklahoma, where his aggressive tendencies only intensified. Duke attacked 3 different staff members over a 2-year period, with each incident becoming more severe. The final attack involved a volunteer who had gotten too close during feeding time. Duke had grabbed the man's arm and nearly severed it before other staff could intervene with tranquilizer guns. Rather than destroy Duke, the facility's owners chose to unload him onto the exotic pet market through intermediary organizations like Second Chance Wildlife Sanctuary. It was a common practice in the industry. Dangerous animals were passed from facility to facility, with each transfer erasing a little more of their violent history. By the time Duke arrived at Elijah's property, he had been involved in 5 documented attacks resulting in serious human injury. But Elijah knew none of this. The paperwork he received described Duke as a gentle giant with excellent human socialization. The early weeks of Elijah and Duke's relationship seemed to validate the sanctuary's claims. Duke appeared calm and responsive to Elijah's presence. He would approach the fence when Elijah brought food, seemed to enjoy being spoken to, and even displayed what Elijah interpreted as playful behavior. For Elijah, those first weeks felt like a rebirth. He had purpose again. Every morning, he would check on Duke before leaving for work. Every evening, he would spend hours by the enclosure, talking to the tiger about his day, sharing stories about Sarah, finding comfort in the simple presence of another living being who seemed to accept him unconditionally. But what Elijah interpreted as bonding was actually something far more sinister. Duke wasn't developing affection for his new caretaker. He was studying him. Tigers are apex predators with sophisticated hunting instincts, and Duke was unconsciously cataloging Elijah's routines, his vulnerabilities, his trust. The warning signs began subtly. Duke started spending more time near the fence closest to Elijah's house, watching the windows with an intensity that should have been concerning. He began vocalizing more frequently, especially at night, with calls that wildlife experts recognize as territorial marking rather than social communication. More troubling was Duke's reaction to Elijah's daily feeding routine. Rather than the excitement most captive animals show at feeding time, Duke displayed what animal behaviorists call predatory escalation, a heightening of hunting instincts triggered by the presence of potential prey. Dr. Marcus Webb, a big cat specialist who had consulted for exotic animal facilities across Texas, was contacted by a concerned neighbor in September 2023. The neighbor had reported hearing unusual vocalizations from the Benjamin property and was worried about safety issues. Dr. Webb's visit to Elijah's property resulted in an urgent written report that was later found among Elijah's personal effects. The report, dated September 18, 2023, contains stark warnings about Duke's behavior and explicit recommendations for immediate action. The animal displays classic predatory assessment behaviors toward the property owner, Dr. Webb wrote. He tracks Mr. Benjamin's movements with focused intensity, shows heightened arousal in his presence, and exhibits territorial marking behaviors that indicate he views the property as his hunting ground rather than his home. I strongly recommend immediate cessation of all direct contact and consideration of professional placement at a secure facility. The report included photographic evidence of Duke's concerning behaviors, images of him stalking along the fence line while Elijah worked in his yard, pictures of territorial markings around the perimeter of his enclosure, and video stills showing the tiger's predatory posture during feeding interactions. Dr. Webb's final recommendation was unambiguous. This animal poses an immediate and significant threat to human safety. The owner's emotional attachment and lack of professional training create a dangerous situation that requires immediate intervention. Elijah's response to Dr. Webb's warnings revealed the depth of his emotional investment in his relationship with Duke. In a handwritten note found in his papers, Elijah dismissed the expert's concerns as fear-mongering by someone who doesn't understand our bond. Duke isn't just an animal to me, Elijah wrote. He's family. He's the first living thing that's depended on me since Sarah died. I know he would never hurt me because he knows I love him. Dr. Webb doesn't see what I see when Duke looks at me. There's recognition there, gratitude, maybe even affection. I'm not giving up on him just because some expert thinks he's dangerous. This response highlighted the tragic psychology that drives many exotic pet tragedies. Elijah's profound loneliness had created a desperate need for connection that blinded him to obvious danger signals. He had projected human emotions and motivations onto an apex predator, interpreting Duke's natural behaviors through the lens of his own emotional needs. The exotic pet industry understands this psychology and deliberately exploits it. They target isolated individuals precisely because loneliness makes people susceptible to anthropomorphizing dangerous animals. The more isolated and emotionally needy the person, the more likely they are to ignore expert warnings and maintain dangerous relationships with predators. As September turned to October 2023, Duke's behavior became increasingly concerning to anyone with knowledge of big cat psychology. Security cameras that Elijah had installed around his property captured footage that would later be analyzed by federal investigators and animal behavior experts. The footage revealed a systematic escalation in Duke's predatory behaviors. He began spending entire days positioned at the section of fence closest to Elijah's house, maintaining visual contact with his movements inside. When Elijah worked in his yard, Duke would pace along the fence line, matching his movements with the focused attention of a hunter tracking prey. Most disturbing was Duke's behavior during Elijah's daily feeding visits. Rather than approaching for food, Duke would position himself strategically within the enclosure, using environmental features to practice ambush scenarios. Animal behavior experts who later analyzed the footage identified classic predatory stalking patterns, with Duke repeatedly rehearsing attack approaches from various angles. Dr. Jennifer Torres, a wildlife psychologist who specializes in captive predator behavior, reviewed the security footage as part of the federal investigation. Her analysis painted a chilling picture of a predator systematically preparing for a kill. What we see in this footage is textbook predatory conditioning, Dr. Torres explained. Duke isn't displaying random aggressive behavior. He's conducting reconnaissance. He's learning Elijah's patterns, identifying optimal attack positions, and rehearsing killing strategies. This is how tigers behave in the wild when they're preparing to hunt specific prey. The security footage also revealed that Duke had begun engaging in what experts call caching behavior, hiding killed small animals around his enclosure in preparation for an extended feeding period. This behavior indicates that a predator is planning for a large kill that will provide food for several days. Most chilling of all was footage from October 8, 2023, just 4 days before the fatal attack. The cameras captured Duke practicing what can only be described as killing techniques on a large log that he had positioned in his enclosure. The footage shows him repeatedly grabbing the log with his jaws, performing the head-shaking motion that tigers use to break the necks of large prey, and then practicing the dragging behavior used to move kills to secure feeding locations. He was literally rehearsing Elijah's murder. Despite the mounting evidence of Duke's dangerous intentions, Elijah continued his daily routine of entering the tiger's enclosure for what he called bonding time. These sessions involved sitting with Duke, talking to him, and sometimes even making physical contact by reaching through the fence to touch his fur. Elijah documented these interactions in a journal that was later found by investigators. His entries reveal a man desperately clinging to the illusion of a meaningful relationship with an animal that was planning to kill him. Duke was especially affectionate today, he wrote on October 10, 2023. He came right up to the fence when I called his name and let me pet his head for almost 5 minutes. I think he's finally starting to trust me completely. Sarah would have loved him. She always said I had a way with animals. The tragic irony of Elijah's interpretation couldn't be more stark. What he viewed as Duke's affection and trust was actually the tiger's final assessment phase before launching his attack. Duke was allowing close contact because he had determined that Elijah posed no threat and would be easy prey. The final entry in Elijah's journal, dated October 11, 2023, revealed his complete vulnerability. Tomorrow, I'm going to try something new with Duke. I want to spend more time inside his enclosure. Maybe even bring a chair so I can sit with him for longer periods. I think he's ready for that level of trust. I can see it in his eyes. He knows I love him. Elijah Benjamin had unknowingly written his own death sentence. October 12, 2023, dawned clear and crisp in rural Texas. Elijah followed his normal routine, leaving for his construction job at 6:30 a.m. after checking on Duke and ensuring his water and food supplies were adequate. What Elijah didn't notice was that Duke's behavior that morning was markedly different from previous days. Security footage from that morning shows Duke in a state of heightened alertness. Rather than his usual relaxed posture, he was pacing with the focused energy of a predator preparing for action. His movements were deliberate and controlled, and he spent considerable time positioned at the section of fence that offered the best view of Elijah's approach route. When Elijah returned from work that afternoon, he found Duke waiting for him at the fence, an unusual behavior that Elijah interpreted as eagerness for their daily interaction. In reality, Duke had been maintaining that position for hours, watching for his prey's return. At 4:30 p.m., Elijah began his final feeding routine. Security cameras captured him preparing Duke's dinner, approximately 20 pounds of raw beef that he had purchased from a local butcher shop. As always, he planned to hand-feed Duke through the fence before spending time sitting with him inside the enclosure. But this day would be different. This day, Duke had decided that the real meal wouldn't be the beef. At 4:47 p.m., Elijah entered Duke's enclosure carrying the bucket of meat. Security footage shows him walking confidently toward the center of the enclosure, calling Duke's name in the gentle tone he always used. Duke approached slowly, his massive body moving with the fluid grace that made tigers such efficient killers. What happened next occurred with shocking speed. As Elijah bent down to place the food bucket on the ground, Duke launched his attack with the lightning-fast reflexes that had been perfected over millions of years of evolution. The tiger's massive jaws clamped down on Elijah's neck from behind, immediately severing his spinal cord and crushing his windpipe. Death was nearly instantaneous, but Duke's predatory instincts were just beginning to express themselves. What followed was 17 minutes of footage so disturbing that federal investigators classified it as sensitive material and restricted access to only essential personnel. The security cameras captured every moment of Duke's systematic consumption of his human prey, providing an unprecedented and horrifying window into the feeding behavior of an apex predator. The neighbor who first called 911, Patricia Molina, lived in the house closest to Elijah's property. Her message was simple but revolutionary. You can love people and still have boundaries. You can be tolerant and still have standards. You can survive anything when you know who you are and what you believe. Sometimes the most important battles aren't against external enemies. Sometimes they're against people who want to change who you are. And sometimes survival means saying no to that change, even when everyone expects you to say yes. Especially then. The investigation revealed that Second Chance Wildlife Sanctuary was part of a network of shell organizations that specialized in placing dangerous animals with vulnerable individuals. They maintained detailed psychological profiles of potential clients, specifically targeting people dealing with grief, isolation, and emotional trauma. Internal emails, obtained through federal search warrants, revealed the calculated nature of their targeting strategies. One email chain discussed Elijah specifically, identifying him as an ideal placement due to his emotional vulnerability and financial stability. Subject shows classic signs of unresolved grief and social isolation, one email noted. Property inspection confirms adequate space and resources. Psychological profile suggests high likelihood of accepting difficult animals and resistance to expert warnings. Recommend placement of Duke pending financial clearance. The emails made it clear that the organization knew exactly what kind of animal they were placing with Elijah and understood the risks involved. They had deliberately chosen him as a target because his emotional state made him unlikely to heed safety warnings or surrender the animal even if problems arose. Even more damning was evidence that the organization had falsified Duke's background documentation. The paperwork provided to Elijah described Duke as having excellent human socialization and no history of aggressive incidents. The real documentation, found in the organization's files, told a very different story. Duke's actual records documented 5 separate attacks on humans, including the near-fatal mauling of a facility worker in Oklahoma. These incidents had been systematically concealed through a network of shell companies and legal settlements designed to hide the dangerous histories of problem animals. The investigation also revealed that this wasn't an isolated case. Second Chance Wildlife Sanctuary had placed over 200 dangerous exotic animals with private individuals over a 5-year period. Follow-up investigations identified at least 12 other serious incidents, including 3 additional human fatalities that had been covered up or misrepresented as accidents. One of the most disturbing discoveries was a training manual used by the organization's sales representatives. The manual provided detailed instructions on how to identify and exploit emotionally vulnerable potential clients. Look for indicators of social isolation, recent loss, or major life transitions, the manual advised. These individuals are most likely to form strong emotional attachments to animals and least likely to surrender them even when problems arise. Emphasize the rescue narrative and the animal's need for love and stability. The manual also provided scripts for deflecting safety concerns and minimizing the significance of aggressive behaviors. Sales representatives were trained to dismiss expert warnings as fear-mongering and to reinforce the client's sense of special connection with their animal. In essence, the exotic pet industry had weaponized human loneliness and grief for profit, creating a system that deliberately placed killers with victims while providing legal cover through complex corporate structures and falsified documentation. The federal investigation into Elijah's death ultimately resulted in the largest criminal prosecution in the history of the exotic pet trade. 17 individuals were indicted on charges ranging from fraud and conspiracy to negligent homicide. The organizations involved were shut down and their assets seized for victim compensation. But for the people who loved Elijah Benjamin, no amount of legal justice could address the senseless brutality of his death. He had no immediate family left alive, but his co-workers and neighbors struggled to process not just his loss, but the horrific manner in which he died. Elijah was a good man who deserved better, said Tom Richardson, his supervisor at the construction company where he'd worked for over 20 years. He was quiet, reliable, never caused trouble for anyone. He just wanted something to love after all those years alone. It breaks your heart that his kindness got him killed in such a terrible way. The psychological impact of Elijah's death extended far beyond his immediate circle. Patricia Molina, the neighbor who witnessed the attack, required extensive therapy to address the trauma of what she had seen and heard. The emergency responders who handled the scene also struggled with the unprecedented nature of the incident. "I've been a paramedic for 15 years," said James Cooper, who was part of the emergency response team. "I've seen car accidents, shootings, industrial accidents, everything you can imagine. But this was different. This was a human being who was hunted and eaten by an animal in his own backyard. It changes how you think about everything." The broader community also grappled with difficult questions about exotic pet ownership and the responsibilities of local authorities to prevent such tragedies. Several neighbors admitted that they had been aware of Duke's presence but hadn't realized the danger he posed to Elijah or the surrounding area. Duke himself was euthanized immediately following the attack, but the necropsy results provided additional insights into the psychology and physiology of apex predators in captivity. Despite months in Elijah's care, Duke showed no signs of domestication or human bonding. His brain chemistry and behavior patterns remained identical to those of wild tigers. The necropsy also revealed the full extent of Duke's consumption of Elijah's body. His stomach contents included not only human tissue, but also fragments of Elijah's clothing, his watch, and other personal items that had been consumed along with his flesh. The systematic nature of the feeding indicated that Duke had processed Elijah exactly as he would any other prey animal. Dr. Torres, the wildlife psychologist who analyzed Duke's behavior, used the case to highlight the fundamental impossibility of forming genuine bonds with apex predators. People need to understand that tigers, lions, and other large predators don't experience emotions like love, gratitude, or loyalty, she explained. They're magnificent animals perfectly designed for killing, and no amount of human affection can change their fundamental nature. When we try to domesticate them, we're not creating companions. We're just creating opportunities for tragedy. The story of Elijah Benjamin and Duke has become a landmark case in the ongoing debate over exotic pet ownership and the regulation of dangerous animals in private hands. Wildlife experts and legal advocates have used the details of Elijah's death to push for stronger federal legislation banning the private ownership of big cats and other apex predators. The Elijah Benjamin Act, introduced in Congress 6 months after his death, would prohibit private ownership of tigers, lions, leopards, and other large predators while requiring existing owners to surrender their animals to accredited sanctuaries. The bill has gained bipartisan support, with lawmakers citing the preventable nature of Elijah's death as evidence for the need for immediate action. No one should die the way Elijah Benjamin died, said Representative Maria Santos, one of the bill's sponsors. His death was entirely preventable if we had proper regulations in place to prevent dangerous animals from being placed with untrained individuals. We owe it to his memory to ensure that no other family has to endure this kind of loss. The exotic pet industry has lobbied heavily against the legislation, arguing that proper regulation rather than prohibition is the appropriate response. However, the evidence uncovered in Elijah's case has undermined their arguments by demonstrating the systematic deception and negligence that characterizes much of the industry. Animal rights organizations have also used Elijah's story to highlight the broader ethical issues surrounding exotic pet ownership. They argue that keeping apex predators in captivity is inherently cruel to the animals and inevitably dangerous to humans, regardless of the quality of care provided. Tigers belong in the wild, not in people's backyards, said Dr. Rachel Martinez of the Wildlife Protection Society. Every tiger in private hands is a potential tragedy waiting to happen. Elijah's death wasn't an anomaly. It was the predictable result of a system that treats wild predators as commodities to be bought and sold. The case has also sparked broader discussions about the psychology of exotic pet ownership and the vulnerability of isolated individuals to predatory business practices. Mental health professionals have noted that the same emotional needs that drive people to seek exotic pets also make them susceptible to ignoring safety warnings and expert advice. Loneliness is a powerful psychological force that can override rational thinking, explained Dr. Michael Chun, a psychologist who specializes in human-animal relationships. When someone like Elijah is desperate for connection, they become vulnerable to believing that they can form meaningful relationships with animals that are fundamentally incompatible with human companionship. As the first anniversary of Elijah's death approaches, his story continues to serve as a stark reminder of the deadly consequences of treating apex predators as pets. The security footage of Duke's attack, while too disturbing to release publicly, has been used in training programs for wildlife officers and emergency responders to help them understand the realities of predator attacks. The footage has also been shown to lawmakers and regulators as evidence of the urgent need for stronger protections against the exotic pet trade. Those who have viewed it describe it as a life-changing experience that eliminates any romantic notions about the possibility of taming wild predators. After watching what happened to Elijah, you understand viscerally that these animals are not pets, said Senator Robert Thompson. who chairs the committee reviewing the Elijah Benjamin Act. They're killing machines that view humans as prey. No amount of love or care can change that fundamental reality. For those who knew Elijah personally, his death has served as a painful reminder of the importance of human connection and community support for isolated individuals. Several of his former co-workers have become advocates for mental health resources and social programs designed to address loneliness and social isolation. If Elijah had had more people in his life, maybe he wouldn't have needed to fill that void with a tiger, reflected Tom Richardson. His death taught us that we need to do better at reaching out to people who are struggling alone. Loneliness kills, sometimes in ways you never expect. The legacy of Elijah Benjamin's death extends far beyond the immediate tragedy of his loss. His story has become a catalyst for legislative change, a case study in predatory business practices, and a stark warning about the deadly consequences of treating wild animals as emotional support systems. But perhaps most importantly, Elijah's death has forced society to confront uncomfortable truths about loneliness, vulnerability, and the lengths to which people will go to find connection and meaning in their lives. His tragedy serves as a reminder that the solution to isolation isn't to seek companionship from creatures that view us as prey, but to build stronger communities and support systems that prevent people from becoming so desperate for connection that they'll risk their lives for the illusion of love from an apex predator. The exotic pet industry continues to operate, continues to target vulnerable individuals, and continues to place dangerous animals in inappropriate settings. Every day, somewhere in America, another lonely person is being convinced that they can find companionship and purpose by adopting a creature that evolution has designed to kill them. Elijah Benjamin's death won't be the last tragedy of its kind unless fundamental changes are made to how we regulate dangerous animals and support isolated members of our communities. His story demands action, demands change, and demands that we honor his memory by ensuring that no one else dies as brutally and unnecessarily as he did. If you're someone who believes that people deserve to know the truth about the exotic pet industry and the predatory tactics they use to target vulnerable individuals, then you need to subscribe to this channel right now. The information we're sharing could save lives, and the only way these stories reach the people who need to hear them is if viewers like you help spread the word. Hit that subscribe button because what we're exposing here isn't just entertainment, it's a matter of life and death. The memory of Elijah Benjamin deserves more than just our sympathy. It deserves action, it deserves change, and it deserves the promise that his brutal death will prevent others from suffering the same fate. Remember his name, remember his story, and remember that in a world full of predators, the most dangerous ones are often the ones we invite into our homes because we believe they'll fill the emptiness in our hearts. Wild animals belong in the wild. Elijah Benjamin learned that truth too late to save his own life, but it's not too late to save others. Subscribe to our channel for more investigations that expose the truth behind industries that profit from human vulnerability and animal suffering. We're committed to telling the stories that corporations and lobby groups want buried, the stories that could save lives if enough people hear them. Share this video with everyone you know. Post it on social media. Send it to your representatives. Make sure that Elijah Benjamin's story reaches the people who have the power to prevent future tragedies. And if you or someone you know is considering exotic pet ownership, remember Elijah's final moments. Remember the sound of Duke's jaws crushing his neck. Remember the 17 minutes of systematic consumption that followed. Remember that no amount of loneliness is worth risking such a death. The next time you see an advertisement for exotic animal adoption, think of Elijah Benjamin. The next time someone tells you about their tame tiger or friendly big cat, remember Duke's bloody muzzle and predatory patience. Most importantly, if you're struggling with loneliness or grief, reach out to other humans for help. Join community groups, seek therapy, volunteer for causes you care about. Find connection and purpose through relationships with your own species. not through the false promise of bonds with creatures that evolution designed to kill you. Elijah Benjamin spent 38 years mourning his wife and isolating himself from human companionship. His death was the inevitable result of trying to fill a human-sized hole in his heart with an apex predator's tolerance. Don't make his mistake. Don't become another victim of an industry that profits from turning human vulnerability into animal prey. Thank you for watching, and never forget, there's no such thing as a tame tiger, only a tiger that hasn't killed you yet.